Couldn't get a hold of friends in San Francisco. There was a lot of destruction and death that came out of that earthquake, and I really felt the need to do something.
I'm Joe Seamandel, and this is Raven Conversation. And today I'm joined by retired guardsman Bill Pola. He was a retired lieutenant colonel, public affairs. You were at the 122 for a number of years. You were in the 205th as well in your career. I'll let him kind of share his story. He's an avid watcher of the podcast, and we're trying to highlight more retirees, and I appreciate you coming on, Bill.
Joe, I'm really happy to be here. Like we were just talking about, I have followed these podcasts for a while. Again, as a public affairs officer, right? You like to see the kind of the edge of what can be done, and this is great stuff to watch.
Oh, I appreciate it. Intro and background on yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in Northern California. Went to one of the many California state universities, in my case in Sacramento. Also went to community college, and one of the few places that's actually called a junior college, Santa Rosa Junior College. Sacramento State, graduated there, and was having, this was probably, everything I'm going to say today is going to date myself, but this was probably like the mid-'80s, and was not having a lot of luck getting full-time work with my media communications degree. And I'd always thought about the military, and had never really, I think I talked with an Air Force guy when I was in high school about ROTC, which I had no idea what that was. But so now I had a degree, and I knew that the military would value that degree, and I could become an officer. So that's kind of where I was at. And then an event happened, and I know you're a baseball fan. I remember you've done some baseball writing. So I'm gonna quiz you on some baseball trivia, and we're right in the middle of an anniversary. 1989 World Series.
Oh yeah, the earthquake.
Dang you.
Oh
yes, yeah. Absolutely. No one ever gets that, but it was the Giants and the A's, right? So grew up in Northern California, and you're a Giants and/or A's fan. My family was a Giants family. And I was living in Sacramento at the time, which is about 80 miles directly east of the Bay Area. Yeah. It was about 5 p.m, and I was sitting around a house with I had a bunch of roommates, and I felt kind of woozy, like I don't feel too good. And then I was like, well, maybe that was an earthquake. And I walked outside, and this is downtown Sacramento, and there's tons of palm trees, and so there are palm trees across the street are swaying back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I'll turn the radio on or the TV, see what's going on. And then what followed was like a week of intensely listening to the news and the radio and the TV. Couldn't get a hold of friends in San Francisco. There was a lot of destruction and death that came out of that earthquake. And I really felt the need to do something. And I kind of, you look around, you go, oh, well, here are these guys in uniform and driving Humvees and Jeeps. Maybe I could join the Guard. So that happened in October. The next month, I was in a recruiter's office. December, I was at MEPS. January, I was at basic training. So I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, to be a personnel records specialist. It was the fastest route to basic training, AIT, and back home. So I had a wedding to attend, my own wedding to attend. So I did that really quick, came back, spent about a year or so in California in a personnel service company, and then moved up here to find work and do the things you do once you're young and married and out on your own. I ended up at a personnel service company here, right at Building 33, just right down the street, and was fine and happy there. And then 9/11 happened. Wait, was that? No, let's back up. It was Desert Storm. Desert Storm happened, and we actually got mobilized. So our personnel service company got selected to go to Fort Ord, California, to help process Guard and Reserve folks from California who were going overseas. So I spent about 6 months as a personnel clerk at Fort Ord, and at the time that was home of the 7th Infantry Division, an actual light division in the U.S. Army, not the division headquarters that it is now over at JBLM. Had an interesting time there. Got a chance to go to air assault school. One of my kind of themes throughout my career has been, and this was codified by one of my senior TAC officers, that you are your own career manager. So I showed up here at this personnel service company as a young PFC. I'm like, I want to go to air assault school. They laughed at me. And I'm like, nobody here in Washington goes to air assault school. Maybe some Cav guys do, and that's it. I'm like, okay, fine. But then, 6 months later, we're at Fort Ord, which has an air assault school. So I got a chance to very easily just got a slot, got in, did the class, and off we go. So that was great. Came back, immediately went through to officer candidate school here. Now it's the 2nd Battalion 205th RTI, Regional Training Institute. At the time, it was simply called the Washington Military Academy.
Yep.
I was class 3-5, and I think we're bumping up to class 70 at this point in time. So went through that, got branched field artillery. I had no idea what that was, how that worked. It was kind of a forced branching. A lot of us got just hey, you're all going field artillery. They didn't really care what our thoughts were. At the time, I wanted to be an engineer because I wanted to blow things up.
As you do in your
as you do. However, at the time, we didn't have any engineer units in the state.
Yeah. So
I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go field. It's like I kind of didn't care. I'm really glad I ended up at 2146, and I was there for almost the entirety of my company grade time. Fire support officer at the company and battalion level, fire direction officer, platoon leader, battery commander. I commanded Alpha Battery, which was headquartered out of Montesano at the time. We had a detachment in Olympia at the headquarters, the old headquarters building. From there, I was the 1, I was the 2, I was an assistant 3, I was a 4. In artillery, we do all of those things, right?
Yeah.
They just what have you. So at the end of my time there, I think when the 81st Brigade got mobilized in 2003, I was the S2, got moved to the S1. And then we spent 4 months here at JBLM mobilizing.
I remember
folks. That was a rough time. They didn't know They didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah.
What do we need to train them on? Let's train them on everything.
Yes.
Off we go.
Yes. Every week was a different adventure.
Oh my gosh, it was nuts. And I was the one, so trying to keep track of not only just the people that were in our battalion, but people coming, people going, what trucks they were going to be assigned to. All of that was just a very difficult task for sure.
Yeah.
I had some great people who had been in the one shop for a long time who did some excellent work, and I just kind of rode that horse. Ended up, we get deployed. 2146 goes to Kuwait, but I ended up on brigade staff as in information ops. There was a small little sliver of IO. We get to LSA Anaconda, Balad, and start piecing and parting out the whole brigade staff. Everybody, that whole brigade was scattered all over the country. Yeah. Brigade staff, and I think it was 181 Support Battalion were kind of up there in Balad, and then did perimeter security. Then this weird opportunity showed up. The S3, Colonel Tom Heslin, created Task Force Tacoma, which was an armor company with 17 of the 42 tanks in the country at the time, an engineer company, and a couple of other. We had a scout platoon. We were talking about Tim Osmer. He was the platoon leader at the time, and some other bits and pieces from other units. And I ended up as an assistant 3, one of the battle captains. So it was myself, Colonel Owazik, and who's now Colonel Wazek. We were obviously all were captains then, and Captain Casey Vu, I think, has gotten out a while ago, and that was 24/7. So we worked. We all got a day off, but it was 6 days, steady rotation the whole time, the whole time. We ended up at the end of that tour. Task Force Tacoma went up to Mosul in January of 2005 to plus up security up there for the first election that they had. So we were up there. The election happened. There was no crowds of violence or anything. It happened pretty smooth. And then we were done. Came back down to Balad, packed up our stuff, and flew back. So that was indeed quite the adventure. 16 months door to door. I call it door to door, but the start of our orders to the end of our orders. My second deployment with the reserves was 400 days, which was maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks of training at the front, and 365 days in theater. And in my third deployment, I had 2 weeks of training. And I was an individual augmentee, just off you go. I had 2 weeks of training. So it was interesting to see. And that one was in 2015. So, over the course of 10 years, how much, they flexed the training that was required. So all of that was done as a field artilleryman. I then ended up in the reserves in a small unit that augmented First Corps. So I was still in a field artillery position, but in the reserves. And those are few and far between, right? Because the reserves are mostly combat service support. We augmented First Corps staff. I was still a field artilleryman, but ended up deploying in a logistics role. So I ended up working in the Multinational Corps Iraq C4, a staff of 250 people. General Petraeus was the MNCI commander at the time. And I learned about logistics. I really learned, I joke with people that I know more about the Iraqi logistics system than our logistics system, because we were helping train the advisors to the Iraqi logisticians. We had these LTAT, logistics training and assistance or assessment teams. You had all sorts of little teams at the time when you were doing coin operations to help advise the Iraqis, right? So did that, but because I had a year of logistics experience under my belt, I was able to come home, and also because at that point in time I had certainly finished, at the time you'd call it the Officers Advanced Course, right? So I had finished my Field Artillery Officers Advanced Course, been a year as a logistician, but because of that, I didn't have to do a whole nother advanced course to get the logistics branch. It was literally a 2-week course. And they're like, okay, fine, here you go, you're a logistician. Like, oh, great. So I ended up then as a logistician. I was then working in the reserves for FEMA. FEMA has a defense coordinating element, which is a little slice of active duty folks, augmented by some reservists who were us, and I was in a logistics seat there. Learned a lot about domestic operations. I worked at the FEMA region headquarters, FEMA Region 10 up in Bothell. Learned a lot about domestic ops through, FEMA's got a ton of courses you take, classes you attend, and through exercises that we did. So I was, at the time, and of course, like a true guardsman, right? I've civilian jobs this whole time.
Yeah.
At the time of that deployment, I was a contractor, and my job was to teach ROTC. So I was a contractor teaching ROTC at the University of Washington. But I was in uniform. I wore the ROTC patch. None of the cadets knew that I was any different than the active duty folks that I worked next to. And I've run into former cadets even now, and they're like, "You were a contractor? I had no idea." I'm like, "Yep, I was." So one of my former students at the time was doing some ADOS and recruiting here, Drew Nevins. I think you probably know Drew. He's a major or lieutenant colonel now?
Major.
He's a major now. I ran into him. I'm like, is there possibly any slots for, and I was a major at the time, for a wayward major to come back to the Guard. And he's like, well, and he's super eager.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can find out. And so he comes back to me a couple of weeks later, and he's like, hey, there's this small public affairs unit, and the commander's Colonel Belante. And I'm like, I know Tony Belante. I know Anthony. And I do. Like, I've had Anthony to my house for dinner, but well before this. And he lives down the street, around the corner from me. And he's like, well, hey, he's looking for an XO. I'm like,
there you go.
I'm looking for a job. And does it include working for Colonel Belante? Then yes, I'm in. So came back over in the Guard into that XO slot. Went off to public affairs school, public affairs qualification course. I don't know what your experience was with that course, and I think we probably talked about it before. Yeah. By far, certainly within the Army, and even in my civilian education, the hardest 12 weeks of school I've ever had. Just the practical exercise program they have that's continuous and builds on itself.
I often joke a little bit about because I did the online, right?
Okay.
So 7 months.
Okay.
I often joked afterwards that if I was not in a full-time job, if I was not already a college graduate, if this was not the line of work I want to do, I don't know if I'd still be in public affairs. It was an extremely hard course.
Very
that a lot of people just didn't realize was very hard.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So right. Well, like with each scenario, so like you start off with Navy unit that's deployed, and things happen on the ship, and you've got to be able to address those in a press release, in for a radio interview, for a press interview, all of that stuff, and then it just continues to build, and you rotate through. Each little team, you're writing the press release. You've got to go and do the radio interview. You've got to go to the TV interview. The hardest ones were the press conferences.
Yes, because you had to stand up there in front of your peers and get questions.
I don't mind the peers. I don't mind the peer stuff. Peers are always okay to work with and around because they have some empathy for you.
Yeah.
It was the instructors who were just sharks at that press conference, and you misstep and they were just right on you. Oh, it was painful. And then I relived that during the Cascadia Rising
exercise.
Thank you. I only work as an exercise planner. You'd think I'd be able to remember that word. So the Cascadia Rising exercise, we're sitting in a press conference, and we had, within the exercise, had just mobilized the MP unit to go to Seattle to help with riot control, right? And as you can imagine, right, in the Guard, we're excited to go do our job, regardless of what the job is. And so the person who was representing the MP unit at the time expressed his excitement that we were going to get to go do this. But it came across like, oh, hey, we're excited to go thump heads. And before we left that press conference, the exercise Twitter account was already buzzing with, oh, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. So like, even before I had got out of there, I was like, oh, no. I've got things to answer for. So, yeah, very hard. So, went to that, was here at the 122nd for a little bit, ended up then at the JOC as the public affairs officer at our Joint Operations Center. And I had also done some time there as a logistician and worked with Colonel Tad Calkins, who was also like a senior logistician in the state, and got along well with him. I went off, did something else. He went off and did something else. He got tagged. He got asked to be the regimental commander for the 205th. And since he knew I'd spent 12 years teaching ROTC, I was his first call to, hey, we need a commander for the 2nd Battalion, OCS and WOCS. I'm like,
you already kind of have the experience at that point.
Yes, please. I want to do that. So not only the experience teaching ROTC, which is the same subjects. I mean, OCS is a different format than ROTC, but I had come from there. That's where I got my commission. So it was a great bow to wrap up my career, because that was my last position here in the Guard was as the 205th commander, the second of the 205th commander.
So yeah, you kind of answered the first couple of questions there.
Right.
So I would say let's just jump in. Post-guard career, what have you been up to? Kind of what's been happening in your world?
Sure. So I retired in November of 18. And at the time, I was working for a company called Ravenswood Solutions. Some Guard members here might remember having worked with Ravenswood Solutions. What they did or do, because they've broken up, is provide the instrumentation for XCTCs, Exportable Combat Training Center. So the exportable part, the instrumented part, is what Ravenswood supplies. So whatever Guard brigade does one of these XCTCs before they go to a CTC, a Combat Training Center, Ravenswood is contracted to come in and put a tracking device on each soldier, on each vehicle, on each weapon system, and they put a whole bunch of radio towers across the training area. And at the end of a platoon's graded sticks lane, they end up at an AAR tent, and they get an instrumented AAR.
Oh, wow.
And an instrumented AAR is just like you would get at the NTC or JRTC. It's a 3D map through time showing the placement of not only your platoon, but the OP4, the terrain, so you could look at a soldier on the military crest of a hill and show what he sees or doesn't see based on the terrain. So that you can use that, the observer coach trainers, OCTs, can use that to make their points. So, here's where this happened. Here's what that looks like. Because we all know we've been through AARs where you just kind of, what if
you
that
phone
didn't
it
happen?
in? And,
yeah. Well, or it's the arguing of what happened and what didn't happen, especially between OP4 and I saw this, you didn't see me, blah, blah, blah. That gets rid of all of that. So I was working for Ravenswood Solutions, and then COVID happened, right? So about a year and some change after I retired, COVID happened. And Ravenswood, because their work was with National Guard brigades, about 20% of their work went away because all these other brigades had other things to do. But during that time in 2019, 81st Brigade went through an XCTC at Yakima, so I was there for that.
Yeah,
went through that with Ravenswood Solutions. So I got laid off right at the beginning of COVID. Imagine a worse time? You cannot. So right at that same time, I had volunteered for a company called 4Block. 4Block helps people coming off of active duty, also works with Guard folks, to help them find work. It's a 10-week program, elevator pitches, resumes, LinkedIn, interview skills, job search skills, you're negotiating a salary your first 90 days. So I'd gone through that program in 2016, wanted to give something back, work with my military brothers and sisters. So that's kind of what I did through COVID, was help other people coming off of activity find work, but I also used it as a jumping off point for myself to find work, which I eventually did. What my first job out of all of that? Oh, so also during all this time, I was working to teach myself Salesforce. Salesforce is a software program. You're giving me the north and south, but for everybody else,
I remember Salesforce.
It's a customer relationship management software. Think of a very high speed, supercharged Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. Right. I mean, if you're one of the examples that we always use is like realtors, right? So if you're a realtor, you have clients, you have homes. And then say you've got inspectors, and say you've got banks. And so as each client goes through a process, you can track that process, and you can look up, okay, I've got everybody who's in the shopping process. Who do I need to contact today to move to the next, which is to show homes, et cetera. And then what homes have I shown them, right? So I learned kind of the back end of all of that and went through a couple of programs. passed their extremely difficult certification process. I'm a certified Salesforce associate, and a certified Scrum Master. So I picked all that stuff up kind of on my own. One of the programs I did was a Salesforce program called Pathfinder, and through that, I ended up at a job fair, an online job fair. And I don't know if you've been to an online job fair, but they're horrible.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably not that great.
Not a good experience in general, because it's just like you just have like a room on a Zoom call. You go and talk to the Secretary of State's office or whoever, right? And there's somebody there who's just typing away. Hey, have a look at our website. Here are the jobs that are available. It's all the fun of a job fair without the fun of talking to anybody.
Or the swag. I mean, that's 90% of the reason you go to a job fair.
You get a free pen. So I went to this job fair because Salesforce had put me through this program. I'm like, okay, their part of their program is to present to these employers people who are fully trained, so that they are not wasting their time. So I talked with a bunch of people, and it was a very good program. Everybody was on camera. I talked with CEOs. I talked with people who are like, no, we're hiring. You look like you're a good candidate. Let's bring you on for a second interview, and we're going to count this as the first one. Mm-hmm. So I was talking with a small company out of Florida. This was for a 100% remote position. They had a contract with the VA, with the Veterans Health Administration, to update their patient records to Salesforce. So it was a 100% remote position. As I'm going through the process, they're like, oh, by the way, we're in the middle of being acquired by, insert the company I work for now's name here. Are you interested? And that company is a very large government contractor who I'd been trying to get on for a long time. I'm like, absolutely, I'm interested. Let's do it. So I got hired. 6 weeks later, I'm now an employee of this over 50,000 employee company that's scattered across the world. And things are going fine, but not fine. I kind of didn't like the Salesforce thing, even though I had trained through for it. I ended up on a team and then off of that team. But the great thing about the company that I work for is they have this process called being on the bench. So if you're not working on a contract, they don't just fire you.
Yeah.
They keep you around because they hire for talent, not for a particular rear end to put in a particular seat. So I was on the bench for a while, and somebody found my resume. Actually, my current boss found my resume, and the position they were trying to fill, they needed somebody who was familiar with the Guard, bonus points if they were familiar with the 81st Brigade, bonus points if they were familiar with the XCTC program, bonus points if they'd been a field grade officer at the brigade or higher level and maybe had participated in an MDMP once or twice. So I'm like, did you write this job for me? Because I'm the guy for you. So we both got very excited. I got hired, and I ended up now, what I'm doing now is working for the 189th Infantry across the street at JBLM. They're a combined arms training brigade, and they supply the OCTs to lots of different things, including XCTC. So right now I'm working with 81st Brigade to make sure that we get them the OCT support they need for XCTC coming up this July.
Man,
so
look at that. It's like you almost fell right into the right job.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how we ran into each other the other week. I was over here for a Raven Focus working group. So I'm working with the 81st Brigade staff to make sure that we can support with what they need.
Yeah.
So, my civilian career has been, I always kind of get jealous of people who like have a laser focus and they do, they Tad Calkins, we were talking about, he's worked for Boeing for 30 plus years and he's been an engineer and done the things that he does. I've always been jealous of people who've been able to focus with that. One of the things, and we talk about kind of lessons learned and advice to folks who are still in uniform. During COVID, I ended up kind of glomming onto a lot of different podcasts. Yours, this table for sure. Watched a guy rebuild a huge boat. One of the other people I listened to a lot was Adam Savage from Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Right? So he has this workshop and he builds things. And I think I have kind of leaned toward people who are encountering problems, their thought process and how to solve them, and then solving them. So whether you're building a boat or a replica movie prop, it's interesting to see how people work. But Adam Savage talked about being a generalist, and he does lots of things kind of in that prop space and movie costumes and all kinds of stuff. But you saw all the stuff he did in Mythbusters too, which was not that. And he talked about being a generalist, how you've got a hand in lots of different things, and that how being a generalist is being a specialist, or it is a specialty.
Yeah.
It is something to focus on. It's just that it's not an inch wide and a mile deep. It's a mile wide and an inch deep. So to have that, to have my toe in what I call in my resume operations, field artillery, logistics, public affairs, exercise planning. It's all connected, but it's all pretty broad.
Yeah, it's kind of the way the Guard is. I mean, we've heard it kind of time and time again, and you probably heard it too, where a Guardsman isn't just a specialist in one thing, right? They've got that Guard career, and then they got that civilian career, and they have life experience. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is a huge piece of what you're talking about, that generalist of being in the Guard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the Guard, the National Guard specifically forces that. In the reserves, if you can't find a job near you that is your, like if you're a field artilleryman, you can't find a job near you that's a field artillery job. I can go to Connecticut. I can go to Texas. I can go to North Dakota as a reservist and drill. You can't do that in the Guard. You've got to move states. So when you're a field artilleryman and there's only one field artillery battalion in the state, and you're an officer, that pyramid gets very small very fast.
Yep.
There's 3 major slots, I think, right? XO, S3, and then there's a brigade fire support officer as well, though the FA battalion commander is also the FIS Coord, the fire support coordinator, so they kind of work hand in hand. But if you look at that, right, so there's 3 major slots, there's 1 lieutenant colonel slot, and that's it. So, unless you're in the pit elbowing left and right trying to get that one slot, you've got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there are places to go and training dollars to train people to do those other things as well. So it's good. It's good that ability to broaden your knowledge base is here in the Guard for sure.
Yeah. So I like to ask this question, especially to retirees. When you think back at your time in the Guard, what did it do to help with your civilian career?
It's for me, it's all the soft skills. All right? If I was a mechanic, I was a small wheel vehicle mechanic, I've got hard skills. I know how to troubleshoot. I know how to replace parts. I know how to do those things underneath the hood of a vehicle, and I can very easily say, well, if I can do it for a Humvee, I can do it for your Peterbilt truck. Very easy to do. I think what certainly I bring and the folks that I help with 4-block bring are those soft skills that we don't think about at all as being uncommon. Being at the right place at the right time, wearing the right clothes. Mm-hmm. Some people in the civilian world have a problem with that. Just the simplest thing that we learn in basic training, right place, right time, right uniform, people can't do. I was redoing my ComSec certificate today, communication security or computer security today. And if you've not had a civilian job, you don't know that civilian companies don't require that. And so you can show up and go, hey, I've worked on unsecure or secure computer systems, and I know enough to not click on that link that looks weird because it's from a weird email address.
Yeah.
They don't. That's not common. That's not common stuff in the civilian world. And those are just very shallow, everybody kind of does it things that we have in the Guard. But it's all those soft skills. Being able to work on a team, being able to lead a team, right? I mean, almost everybody in uniform leads or has led a team at some point in time, even, right? Unless you're E1 to E4, once you hit E5 in a year or 2 or 3 after you enlist, now you've got some leadership skills. And you can, if you do it right, explain to a civilian employer, I know how to lead, and not have it be what they're thinking, which is knife hand and yelling at people.
Yep, not the same.
It's not the same. Here's how I lead, and you can talk about that. And you have instances, the classic behavioral interview questions of, that are like, tell me about a time when you did X. Tell me about a time when you led a small team. Wow, you've got some stories if you've been in the Guard more than a second or two.
Yeah, it's tell me about a time you led a team. Tell me about the project you guys did, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the longer you're in, the more of those things you have to tell those stories, telling the Guard story. One of the things that we coach our 4-block folks through the interview process is, right, you've got the behavioral interview. You've got a format to answer those questions, the STAR format, situation, task, action, and result. And if you can take that answering format, look at the company's values, and okay, well, this company values honesty. Very simple one, very common. Think of some stories from your Guard career where honesty played a part. Mm-hmm. And then situation, task, action, result, and boom, there you go. You have a very easy way of answering that question, but you've got all these cool in-uniform stories to answer them with that and they don't all have to be busting down a door and shooting somebody in the face, right? Which is
that's what they think.
It's what they think it's all about. But it's 99% a whole lot of other things. So to be able to translate what you've done in the Guard, even if it's being an artilleryman or an infantryman or a translator or interpreter, you can turn that into a soft skill that is very applicable to the civilian workforce. And we're taught to be humble. We're taught to, we're all part of a team, and not to talk about I did something. It's more like we usually answer we did something. But you have to really, turn that off in a civilian job or interview and say I did this. Other than that, it's you as guardsmen, folks in uniform, we have great things.
Of all your jobs in the Guard, I'm going to say public affairs is probably your favorite. But which one was your favorite of all that?
It was being a battalion commander. I mean, it's between that and a battery commander. Hands down, being in charge. It's like a roller coaster because things are going to happen that you can't plan for. But to be able to come through that and have been able to apply your training and experience and hopefully come out the other end with a unit that was better when you started is an absolutely great experience. It's a tough row from post company battery troop command to battalion command. There's a lot of staff time. There's a lot of exercise planning. There's a lot of PowerPoint slides in between A and B. But for me, B was really worth it. But I think there must have been, I was a battery commander like 98, 99 to 2000, 2001, somewhere, a 2-year period somewhere around in there. And then I wasn't a battalion commander until 18, 17, 16. So 15, 16 years between, almost, half my career was spent between the two cool jobs. it was worth it. I mean, I couldn't have been a battalion commander without all the time that I spent watching other battalion commanders, watching other commanders to be what I hope was a decent battalion commander at the other end. That was another Guard story. I hope you enjoyed your New Year's Eve between 1999 and 2000. I did not. Folks who were in at the time might remember that General Daugherty, our adjutant general at the time, had promised the governor that the Guard would be available within 24 hours if anything happened at that Y2K. So everybody, I mean, we didn't have all Guard folks at the armories, but I think that was a Friday night to Saturday. So the 1st of January was a Saturday, so that was drill weekend. So we were already kind of primed to have everybody available, but I spent the night at my armory in Montesano.
Wow.
Waiting for the call.
On Y2K.
We toasted with a little sparkling apple juice and went to bed.
Kind of as we're closing, any advice you'd give guardsmen kind of along the path, right? That are just staring at it and they're like, man, like this is a long time to get to 20. And then you don't realize it goes by in a flash. It really does.
Well, the nice thing too is the blended retirement system. You don't have to go to 20. That was always everybody's goal. About I got to get to 20 because it's that cliff. If I don't get to 20, I'm not getting my retirement. Really, my advice, I've kind of talked about it already. You are your own career manager. Nobody else. People care, but nobody really cares, right? You've got to make things happen on your own. So whether it's being a personnel records specialist who wants to go to air assault school and gets laughed at, but then 6 months later is rappelling out of a helicopter, you can't. If you don't say anything, nobody knows you want to go. So they're not going to send you or prep you to go, so it doesn't happen. If I didn't have to become an official logistics officer. I mean, I have orders that say that is one of my branches. I didn't have to, but I did. Nobody forced me, but I had to bug people and go to particular schools. And there was really no reason to do that other than, hey, I've got a piece of paper that says this. But it helped, right? Because then it got me in front of Colonel Tad Calkins, who heard my story, who then became a commander over here, and then asked me to come be a commander for him. You never know. The other phrase I've heard a lot is, or that has stuck with me that I heard is, get ready. I don't know what for.
Just be ready.
Get ready. So do things to be ready to do other things. I mean, I'm still, I'm going to a military course in 2 weeks because I want to go. It's going to help my job. I don't have to go for my job, but I'm going to go. I don't need to do these schools, but I do. And as a funny aside, we talked about going to Santa Rosa Junior College. I never finished my associate's degree there, but I was able to transfer to a state college, and off I went. I'm 2 classes shy of my associate's degree, and I am working on it. I think I have like a sociology class and a geography class to take. Do I need an associate's degree? No, I do not. Is it part of getting ready? Might be.
Yeah.
It might be. I don't know. So those would be my 2 things. You're your own career manager, and get ready.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Bill. I truly think it's important we continue to connect with our retiree community, whether it's through the podcast or just coming in and talking with us. I think it's one of those things. I think it helps the organization just grow, especially guardsmen hearing it from somebody who did it before.
Yeah, no,
I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah. If you like the video, give it a like. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. We can pass them along. And if you like the video, make sure to subscribe for future videos. Bill, appreciate you.
Joe, thank you very much.